Greetings, my fellow wargamers. We have a very special guest, James Baldwin from Drowned Earth Miniatures. Great to have you here, James.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
You had a quite successful Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, I reckon that's fair to say.
But I think not everyone who wanted to get Drowned Earth backed it yet, so that you know what that means.
Well, yeah, there's always that thing with Kickstarters where a lot of people are saying, "Oh, I like it. Shall I wait until it retail or shall I get it now?" And
it's not about retail. No, I mean the late pledges. I'm one of these people who's waiting for late pledges.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a little bit more of a complicated process than I first anticipated, actually. So I'm working on that now, just working and nailing down a few loose ends. But I'm hoping that it won't be too much longer before I get the late pledges organised.
It's definitely coming.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They will be open for a good 2 months at least.
Fantastic!
So or possibly longer. The idea with these things really is you want to close them as late as you possibly can, but obviously after production has begun, you need to close them in order to guarantee that people will make that Kickstarter goal. So I think probably what will happen is the late pledges will shut down when everything begins to go into sort of the final stages of production, and then after that we'll open a pre-order store, basically.
Okay.
So we will be able to send things out to people who are buying, later in the year, but they won't get them at the same time as the Kickstarter backers. They'll get a sort of second wave, as it were.
And Pledge Manager?
Yep. We're using a Pledge Manager, so. That's why it's taken a little while to get everything properly organised. But yeah, I mean, it just seems sensible to do that nowadays.
Okay, well, I noticed that dinosaurs are a big part of the setting.
They are, yeah.
I actually haven't seen my favourite one, Pterodactyl. Any chance of that ever coming out?
Well, it's too early to talk too much about that sort of thing now, because if there would need to be some extra rules written for flying models. But let's put it this way: it's something that I have given some thought to. So it definitely won't be in the main rulebook with the Kickstarter stuff, but at some stage in the future, I'm definitely hoping to be able to add flying models and maybe even flying cavalry. Yeah,
someone riding a pterodactyl, that would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be fun.
So you are kind of planning flying rules, but it won't be anytime soon.
Yes, exactly. And there's loads of things like that. I've got lots and lots of ideas and things I want to do later on and add to the game. And for me, I think the important thing is trying to strike the balance between adding new things which make the game interesting and make the game fun, but without adding too much extra complication. So I know that certain games they release a lot of extra ideas, and it's fun for people who are already involved in the game. They can keep up, but what they do every time you release that new set of extra rules is you raise the barrier to entry a little bit for the new people who suddenly find all of this stuff, trying to absorb all of this stuff at once, a little bit overwhelming.
You could do some of the rules optional, I suppose.
Yeah.
But not if there's a model specially releasing for them. So, okay.
No, exactly. But I think that what I hope I've done is that I think that the core rules are robust enough that there will be some easy ways to implement those new ideas. So, I mean, when I first designed the game, I hadn't written any rules for cavalry models. I added them later, but they slotted in very neatly with the existing core mechanics, and there's not, the cavalry rules are like less than a page, and most of the stuff is just explaining what happens in specific unusual circumstances.
Well, I'm glad you did that, because Canada on a Mantis is one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's that I haven't seen since the Kickstarter. I haven't seen any more progress on that model yet, but I think I'll see something towards the end of this month. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that, because I've spoken to the James, the sculptor, about it, and he's told me a few sort of interesting ideas that he's got. He wants to really go to town on that saddle and make it look really like a sort of samurai cavalry saddle, like a horse riding samurai. They've got some quite cool design.
It's like a fairly high saddle.
That's right. Yeah, there's a high back to it, and then they've got some sort of nice stylistic choices. So we were talking a little bit about that and how he's going to texture the armor of the Mantis. That sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing him. And I was playtesting him the other day, and he's horrific. It's brutal.
I was watching that 3D tutorial of this Canada, and I actually tried to type something, but I wasn't noticed.
Okay.
Because you actually had some trouble of fitting all of the Mantis's legs on the base. He was trying to keep them together. But I thought, wouldn't it be nice to actually make like a stick or like little tree trunk, twisted tree, horizontally sticking out from the base, and so his arm sort of goes on that. That's how I would have done it.
I see what you mean. Yeah. I think you can definitely do things like that. Those sort of little... what do you call them? Sort of base extenders almost, where you've got a little bit of scenic stuff poking out. So yeah, I'll mention that to him actually.
Okay, thank you. That's great.
Yeah,
because normally when basing these kind of miniatures with multiple legs like spiders, and people have a lot of trouble. And I always like. What they do is they want to keep all the legs on the base, but when I do scenic bases, which are uneven, so I just stick the legs first and also arrange them in an interesting order. I don't want everything touch the ground, and then build a base underneath this. This is my way. So
and mantises are quite interesting because they look like they should be six-legged, but actually two of those legs have evolved into the sort of stabbing arms, and they actually walk around on four legs. So but he's going to be a fun model. I'm looking forward to him.
Again, regarding dinosaurs, how large do you think you'll go?
Well, there are a few different considerations that I've got there. One of which is actually just from a practical point of view. When you've got a game with lots of jumping and climbing and shooting from the tops of buildings, you don't. If the dinosaurs are too maybe big is the wrong word, but too cumbersome, then they have some difficulty getting around, that sort of thing.
Also,
climbing
the
up and
price
walking on walkways. Well, yeah, there is also that. But I haven't decided yet. At the moment, there's also another practical limitation that a 50 mil base, the chamfered or the lipped bases that we're using, the 50 mil version is the largest that I have so far been able to find commercially available. Certainly the company in the UK that makes those kinds of bases goes up to 50 mil, and I think for a long time War Machine only had 50 mil. That was their largest size. Yeah. But they're a big enough operation that they can make their own bases.
So the Colossals bases they're doing themselves.
Exactly, yeah. So what I would say is I think probably what we'd end up doing is if we did have a model that was larger than a 50 mil base, it would probably have its own scenic resin base.
Okay.
which is quite fun from a sculpting point of view as well. You get to make a real scene out of the model, not just not just provide a blank base and expect people to do their own. So I think that that's something that we'll look at later on. Maybe it's something that you won't necessarily be able to buy to use with your crew, but there'll be special scenarios with big dinosaurs in them.
Well, for special scenarios, there's always plenty of model kits.
Yeah, exactly.
Which are probably going to be much cheaper as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing. If you're talking about having a sort of 180 millimeter model, it's going to end up being the best part of, it's going to be upwards of £30 a model, and probably closer to the £40 mark, really. And that's in resin. I wouldn't even attempt to do it in metal, just because it's just the material becomes too expensive at that stage. And also, really large metal casting, you begin to come into more problems about fitting the models fitting together nicely.
Any room for vehicles in this game? Small ones, something that fits on a 50mm base.
Well, I've sort of got two ideas that are floating around in my mind that, as much as I try, I can't get rid of them. And one of them is a kind of Vietnam-style army patrol boat. Because I want to see. I generally have been playtesting the game with the board as water and the buildings and scenery as little islands. But I want to see how much... The game doesn't rely on you doing that at all. I would encourage people to, because it is, the drowned earth after all, having lots of water's fun. And if it looks like a lot of backers, a lot of players are doing the same, then I will start thinking about, that being a viable choice. If most people don't like the idea of having water as the board surface, then obviously making boat models is probably not going to be a great idea. And the other thing, again, back to the sort of dinosaur idea, is slightly bigger dinosaurs with several people riding them might be fun.
Well, what about like something really small that fits on a 50mm base, that kind of, maybe not bikes, but...
Jet skis, possibly.
Well, hydro skis, yeah. Well, if you're using that water,
there are. It's definitely not something that I've thought too much about, but the idea has definitely occurred to me, and it's been one of those things. Some ideas have occurred to me where I've said, no, I don't ever want to do that. Vehicle-wise, I think it would be quite cool. I like the idea of showing people more of what the world has to offer. What kind of a world is it? What's
little
in it?
Tiny walkers with buzz saws.
Interesting you should say that. Let's put it this way. All of the leader models of the factions that we've seen so far are going to have their mounted version. Maybe, though, Forek won't be mounted on a dinosaur. Maybe he'll have some other kind of... Forek is the leader of the militia. So yeah, I've got a different idea for him. Which we probably won't see till the early part of next year. But well, it's not a million miles away from the sort of thing that you're thinking about.
I've been looking at the setting, and you obviously already stated what were your influences, but there's several other things which I definitely noticed. One of these is Cadillacs and dinosaurs.
Yeah, do you know, I'd never heard of that until somebody, before the Kickstarter, somebody on Facebook mentioned that, and I went out. I actually tried to find a copy of it in the UK, and all I could find an anthology for quite a lot of money, which I didn't buy in the end. But I can't say that that's been a direct influence. But from what I've seen, it does definitely has some certain similarities.
I'll talk to you about this after we record this interview.
I think one of the interesting things is that sometimes you find that you're depending on how old something is, you're influenced by something that was influenced by something else, and you didn't see the original thing. But no, I think it's sometimes you, and I think this happens with rules design as well. Somebody says, "Oh, that mechanic's quite similar to this game," and you're like, "Well, I've never played that game." But what you realise is that you have played a game that used that original game as an influence for a design mechanic, and you've borrowed it from that game, who borrowed it from a different game you've never even heard of. So that sort of thing happens a lot. Culture, rule design, all kinds of things.
The thing is, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is not just a video game; it's a cartoon series in a big toy line.
Ah, okay, yeah. No, I think I only saw it as graphic novels.
Game. Oh, graphic novel. Oh, comic. Yeah. It's a comic, and a cartoon. And
yeah.
Saturday morning cartoon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I definitely never saw it.
It's fairly old. 80s.
Yeah. The other one people kept on mentioning was Thundar the Barbarian.
I haven't heard of that.
No, I don't think we had it in the UK when I was a child. I think it went before He-Man, and looking at it, I think He-Man was very heavily influenced by it, but I'd never heard of it.
The other thing is Flash, the 2000 AD comic. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't.
It's really brutal. It's one of the earlier ones. Yeah. Basically, in the future, a time travel has been discovered, so they go back in time to dinosaurs and farm them for meat.
Oh, okay.
And it's extremely brutal. They have massive. Yeah. It's extremely gory. They have massive machines with chainsaws which kill these dinosaurs, but it's a very dangerous job because the stuff constantly get eaten as well.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The other thing what sort of pops to my mind is video game Enslaved.
Yep. In fact, I went out and bought it as I was writing the background. I don't think I finished it actually, but I played a few levels and definitely sort of
just how overgrown everything is. So.
Yeah. No, it was a friend of mine mentioned it to me while I was doing this. He was like, "You really have to go and play that game because it's aesthetically it's going to be a big influence." So that's there are certainly a lot of levels in that game that I think I must have played 5 or 6 hours, something like that. So only the beginning portion of the game really. But a lot of the stuff that I was wandering around thinking, this could pretty much be my world.
Well,
just add a few dinosaurs.
I finished that game, but
right.
Okay. Now, other than dinosaurs, you obviously have giant insects and several other things like some of the player character species.
Yep.
Are something interesting as well. Have you actually thought of doing something that looks completely alien?
Well, there are completely alien, probably not, but there are certain species which are so mixed that it's difficult to really see where their genetic material has come from. So one example actually would be the free model that everyone's getting from the Kickstarter. We did that choose your own adventurer story where I got everyone to contribute to polls at the end of weekly episodes to decide what the character would be like. And so she's vaguely feline but purple and hairless, without with sort of tentacles instead of hair. So she's a pretty alien looking. So there are some other races like that, but certainly nothing that. The races are generally going to look roughly anthropomorphic: 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, a mouth, a nose. That sort of thing.
No centaurs, then?
Probably not.
I don't necessarily mean horse centaurs. I mean they could be something reptilian or feline.
Yeah,
nothing quadrupedal. Quadrupedal.
I don't want to rule it out completely, but certainly I've not. It's not been an idea that I've had so far.
Because what you had so far, you have intelligent apes, you have lizardmen, dwarfs. That's kind of fantasy Fair, right?
Yeah. We've started off with the classics, and I mean, for me, a very big influence, which I mean, I don't think you really see the influence in the Drowned Earth necessarily, but something that I really love about the Star Wars universe is the diversity of different alien races, and the fact, you know, that sort of exotic feel that you get from walking into the cantina and seeing all these, you know, that sort of montage of all these different alien races, you know, smoking pipes and doing all kinds of other crazy stuff. I really love that, and so I definitely wanted that feel of real, you know, genuine diversity, lots and lots of different types of species. But I did decide that there would probably be that I wanted a few common races that made up somewhere between 70 and 80% of the population, and the other. So, you know,
like
3 out of 4 or 2 out of 3 people will be these familiar races that you see time and time again. So that gives us lots of opportunity to add new species, but I'm not going to go crazy with it.
Has this world ever been visited by actual aliens?
No. Well, I don't want to say no. Has ours? Who knows? But not in any narrative. Not in any narrative way. The builders, the civilization that went before the event which destroyed the world, were in space, but within the solar system.
Okay. It's just one of the other influences which I thought would be interesting for Drowned Earth is a science fiction book called Roadside Picnic. You haven't heard of it, no?
No, I haven't.
The thing is, that world, it was sort of like post-modern cyberpunk, but there was one location where aliens have landed and then left artifacts. So it's like a no-go zone where smugglers called us stalkers sort of regularly go in there and trying to smuggle artifacts out of it. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of these things are dangerous and humanity has no idea what they were actually supposed to be used for. They're trying to figure something out by trial and error with often fatal consequences.
Yeah, that sounds fun, actually. I'm going to look that up.
It's actually by Russian writers, Strugatsky brothers, Arkady and Boris Strugatsky, but it's in English. You can get it from Amazon. Roadside Picnic.
Right.
And there's a movie made from it called Stalker.
Tarkovsky.
Yeah. Only there's no special effects in that film at all. It's really done on a shoestring budget, so you have to imagine what's happening.
He also directed Solaris, right?
Yeah. The original one, not the George Clooney one.
Yeah. The good one.
Yeah, the good one. Right. I sort of had like a couple of ideas of things which could have been like in this world. Centaur-like creature was one of them. So I thought that would be really cool. But especially since feline or reptilian centaur-like creature could actually climb easily, unlike the horse one.
Yeah, that's very true. The horse centaurs are a bit cumbersome.
The other thing I was thinking of, because the way you design them is always like a combination of something you kind of trying to design how it looks first. But what if you sort of think of physics first? Like, for example, you know that living creatures produce gases, obviously, in their stomach. But is it possible for engineers to create something which created gases which are lighter than air?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, so you're talking about, again, we're back to kind of flying creatures. Yeah, so I am definitely keen on the idea of flying rules. I like them. They do definitely present a little bit of a challenge in a game which is all about mobility, especially when a lot of the scenarios are based on picking up or holding or guarding or activating objectives. So if you have very fast-moving models which which avoid having to interact with the terrain in that normal way, you have to be very careful about how you write those rules to make sure that it's not too unbalancing. Basically.
They don't need to be fast. What if it's just balloons that are floating?
Yeah, well, actually, dirigibles and hot air balloons and things like that are they're not common in the world, but they are definitely a solution to traveling around the world. And so, that brings up some other possibilities for rules later down the line. Things like airborne deployment, dropping in on a parachute.
Actually seen there's a video on YouTube which you might check out later. I'll send you a link. Called Festo Air Ray. A guy actually done a flying drone of a manta ray.
Oh wow!
So he created like an animatronic remote control puppet of a manta ray, which actually moves like a manta ray, flaps, whatever they called.
Yeah.
And then he sort of put it inside a balloon, a manta ray shaped balloon.
Yeah.
And I was astonished how maneuverable that thing was.
Yeah.
It was very slow, but all it did, it flapped. It actually moved like a manta ray would move. It was actually swimming through the air. It could maneuver in tight spaces, and it could also do aerobatics.
Yeah.
And it was scary how maneuverable that thing. And it wasn't fast, but. Yeah, so you might want to check out that video. I'll send you a link later.
Yeah, sounds fun.
Right. What we got left? We're nearly done, actually.
Okay.
Can I ask you something about the artifacts? What do they actually do in the game? Do you actually gonna make artifacts, or it's just something you collect?
Well, they're in terms of specific scenarios, there might be scenarios where you're picking things up which then actually have an in-game use. Let's think of an example. You might this is a nonsense example. This isn't something I'd actually do, but just as a kind of idea, there's a locked door and you need to find the key. So you find the key, then you go to the door, you unlock the door. Inside is a transmitter, and you try and transmit the code back to base. That sort of thing. So we will have scenarios where there's a kind of narrative aspect to what the artifacts that you're looking for are and what purpose they serve. But that'll definitely be a narrative scenario thing, because what I want to avoid with the balanced scenarios, the standard scenarios in the rulebook, is they can't be too narratively specific. They have to be a little bit generic so that you can play them 20 different times and you can choose what the story is this time around, so they have to be a little bit neutral.
It's just what I was thinking. Wouldn't it be nice if you could actually discover like artifacts and then and you have no idea what it is. You have to try to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
You kind of roll on a random chart to what powers it might have, and you have an option either to sell it or to keep it and use it.
Well, things like that may well come in when I do say when rather than if. But at some stage there's going to be a campaign mode to the game, and when there's a campaign mode, we'll explore lots of those ideas of actually having an ongoing interaction with what you find, and the games having some kind of what's the word? I guess long-term relevance.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But in terms of narrative, the artifacts are very important. Some of the models are armed with artifacts already. Things which have either been cobbled together. So particularly the militia, they've got a fair few weapons which have been found in the ruins. And are quite powerful. But there's a city which is entirely run from some sort of energy generating artifact that nobody quite knows how it works, but they've worked out how to hook it up to the grid, and everyone's got electric light bulbs and stuff, which is a reasonably unusual thing in the Drowned Earth. You don't see too many of them.
Okay. Going back to the light of an air gas, I kind of thought of the actual player character species, where you have these kind of very skinny humanoids who with a floated torso and who float and actually use a sort of weight to keep themselves upright, who can also use equipment to propel themselves slowly, and also because if you shoot them the gas will start coming out, but they have some sort of automatic sealing process, but the gas some of it will still escape, and it's probably quite unpleasant that it's a debuffing area around them if that happens.
It's have you seen or actually read, more appropriately, the Expanse series by James A. Corey?
No.
So was it the Sci-Fi Channel? I think made a TV show out of it, which was a fairly good representation of the books. I think I've read 7 of the books. I think that's all there are, but he's continuing to write the series. But they have a group of people that live out in the Kuiper Belt, who are known as Belters, and they've all been born in space on space stations, on asteroids and moons around Jupiter and that kind of thing. And they've lived out in space for a number of generations and have got brittle bones, long limbs. They can't deal with gravity when they come down to Earth. The gravity immediately crushes them. It sort of reminded me of that, people who are used to living in 0G for the whole of their lives.
Okay. You mentioned once there will be no profiles in the rule book.
Yes, that's right.
That kind of made me raise an eyebrow.
Yeah, well, it's one of those choices where it became possible because all of the models will come with profile cards. And so when I wasn't sure that was possible, so before the Kickstarter, I wasn't sure we'd unlock that as a stretch goal, then it seems sensible to have them all written. But as during the game, you don't really want to be flicking through the rule book. You want to have your profile cards in front of you, like Malifaux, that sort of thing. It makes a lot more sense, and it allows us to do lots of interesting things. We can keep the game very well balanced by just periodically changing the profiles. If something appears to be a little bit overpowered, we can tweak a profile, and then rather than making the entire rulebook obsolete, it just makes one card obsolete, which is relatively simple and easy to replace. And we can also adjust the points values of models. And the other thing that it allows me to do more than anything else is have every model can have a unique weapon. Because rather than having to refer back to a weapon table in the rulebook and a model profile in the rulebook, they can all be, every new model will have a new card, and there's no reason in the world that its weapon needs to have the same stats as somebody else's weapons. So while building profiles and designing models and designing the way that they work and how balanced they are, that really gives me a lot of freedom to fine-tune everything really well.
Okay, last question. Can you tell us something about the Wayfarers?
Yes. So at the moment, I am almost in a position where I'm able to, I think this weekend, I'm going to be able to put up an update to show people the concept art of the Wayfarers. So tell me what you want me to do. Shall I describe one of the models in detail, or one of the concepts in detail, or shall I tell you all 5 of them in much more loose terms?
In rough and loose terms.
So the leader of the Wayfarers is a human monk called Wishbone, who is part of a secret order that reveres and almost worships the artifacts that they find in the ruins.
He's a human.
He's a human, yeah, and he's a sort of crazy scavenger trader kind of guy.
Basically, like stalkers from Roadside Picnic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then we've got a girl. The name isn't finalised yet, actually. So I won't mention it. But a girl who's in the ruins. She's found a Kindle, effectively, with a collection of comic books on it. And has seen all of these superheroes, in these comic books, and doesn't quite realise that it's fantasy and not real. So she's run around the ruins trying to cobble together a costume and trying to model herself on these characters that she's found in this sort of ancient archive that she doesn't quite understand. Then the big guy is called Kahana, and it's an elephant guy who has sawn off his own tusks.
Wow. Because
they stop him from running through the forest easily, and instead he's made out of his tusks this incredible sort of punch dagger. So he's the one we're waiting on, actually. I've seen work in progress. It looks very, very cool.
Amazing.
So that's 3. Then we've got Aranax, who's a human hunter scout. He's a little bit piratical, and also a sort of alpha hunter, alpha predator. He sort of spent a lot of time out in the wilds hunting dinosaurs, basically, pitting his wits against the best predators in Ulaya and seeing whether he can come out tops. And then last of all, we've got a very cool looking, actually, the concept art to this one's really great, kind of swashbuckling birdman who doesn't have wings because he's just feathered, but has got normal human arms and hands.
What about his legs?
So he's got more bird-like legs, but he's tall, sort of anthropomorphic, normal human shape. But he's actually crafted himself some metal wings. So he's better than your average model at jumping off buildings and kind of gliding down safely.
Okay.
So he can't quite fly, but he can fall really well.
Falling with style.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well, James, I really didn't expect you to spill the beans like this.
Well, hopefully that whets all your appetites.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But they're looking good. I'm very pleased with the concepts. They're looking really fun.
Thank you very much for this interview.
No, most welcome. Most welcome. Thanks for having me.